I don't typically like to rebuild things, even if they don't work that well, because it just takes too much effort, and they usually work well enough. But in this case, the wire stripper worked okay, but it was still not working as well as I'd liked. It really needed improvement. One of the things was to get the upper bearing here, different thicknesses of wire. I had to adjust this every time, and because I used 2 screws to allow that to slide up and down, it took some time, and it was hard to adjust, and then it kind of wobbled. So I'll come up with a way to fix that using a knob that I'd scrapped from something, and I'll change this a bit and just have it run up and down as I turn the knob. The other thing was, or the blade, they'd go dull pretty quick. It wasn't in the right spot. I either wasn't cutting the PVC or I was cutting into the copper wire, and it would cause a lot of drag. It would cut the wire. Not that great. So I needed an adjustment there as well, and something to hold the blade better than that. But I thought, why use that blade at all? My wife does quilting, and they use these cutters. It's just a razor in a circle. And this is a replacement blade that she gave me, and I think I can come up with a way to go in the same slot, allow an adjustment, and because that rolls instead of slides across the wire, I think it should stay sharper longer. Okay, I've made this replacement piece, which used to be this one, with slots cut in it, and they were kind of sloppy. And I'm going to the other side this time. It's longer. I'll put the bearing, it's got a little wooden bushing there to hold my big diameter bearing, against there, like this. And what I'll do then is I'll have wooden blocks on either side of this. One will clamp it down on this side, and the other side will just be hard up against it. And I still have to come up with my adjustment. I'll probably wind up with some scrap like this, and I'll have that fixed, and I'll screw that and adjust that up and down. Anyways, I will now thread this little piece. To accept this bolt that I'm using to hold the bearing. Okay, but there's no interference. The bearing here can go straight down onto these bearings, or I can adjust it up and down. This piece of walnut, I'll jam this up in there between those 2 rollers, nice and centered. That'll be my back guide. Glue that in place, and I'll make the other piece to clamp this one down and hold this side. Beautiful. That thickness there is 17, and that web there is like 23. 23 and 17 is 40. So we cut a piece 40 wide, and I'll relieve it so that it sits in there really nice and tight, and I'll have that much surface area contacting here. This should be good and secure. I guess it would have been easier if I'd have just run it through the saw this way. Huh. Oh well, wasn't thinking too clear. I won't use glue on this one because I might want to take it off again. Good and solid. But to hold this in place, I found this. I don't know what it's from. From Drapes, I think. Let's cut that off a little bit. It'll work perfectly. Thought I'd use this piece of steel. I can cut and tap that. Just thread it for this. That'll be my up and down adjustment. Need to think things through a long ways. Had to cut a window because it was too close to the web here. Perfect. Well, it doesn't take all sizes of wire, but it'll be enough for what I work with. Well, this little blade, when it fits into the cutter, has a mandrel, which is just a bolt. Pretty much has a tight fit in there, and the bearing surface is the inside of the diameter of this, rides straight on that shoulder bolt that's there. I have tried a lot of different combinations to hold this blade to allow it to turn, but not wobble, and allow it adjustment up and down. There's just no room. I tried to clamp this blade hard onto a bolt like this, and then have a bearing that I clamped into something, but there's just no room. The clearance in here is just too tight, and so the bearing has to be on this shoulder, and I've clamped the blade itself between two brass washers to keep them, give a thrust on either side, and the bearing surface itself will just be between the inside of this blade and this shoulder of this bolt. There'll be a spring to hold everything tight so it doesn't wobble, limits it anyway, but it's still not so tight that it doesn't turn. That blade's actually turning pretty well. What I have to come up with now is I'll use another piece of alloy like this one to allow adjustment up and down, same kind of clamping arrangement. That should allow me to move this bolt in and out. I've got to make sure that I have enough room to actually put a nut on the outside of this. So I'm just going to glue these pieces down now. At least this one piece I'll glue down, and the other one I'll just screw down like. This has been a real challenge to improve on this design. Look at the state of the shed. I needed to take one thing out of all these little trays and piles, and two sets of taps, drills. I've already cleaned the shed to a degree. got rid of a lot of the alloy filings and the steel spray and from welding. And this turned out to be steel instead of alloy because of the thread here. Had to hold the thread really well. But it works okay now. I've got it adjustable. You know, where the design was probably 80% before, now it's 90%. It's still not that easy to feed wire in the first time, but once you get it going, it goes really easy. Last thing I have to fix is this razor. That is really sharp. I've already cut myself on it. I'll need to come up with a guard for it on this side here. So the trick to making this is how not to interfere with the adjustment, but also guard it, and have it easy to remove when I want to change this blade. Well, it works out. Piece of alloy, shaped to fit, and this was a piece of square rectangular alloy that I had. Fits there, and I'll screw this piece down to this piece because that, when I take these screws out, the whole thing comes out. Or I can just unscrew it here and take the guard off. And I think to hold these pieces together, I'll just use pop rivets. So far so good. Just need a piece to cover that gap there, and I think I will use a piece of this alloy here, shape it to fit, slot down in there. That'll cover the blade. The last thing is to fasten it down. A couple of screws right here. And this project is complete. I've got some wiring here from a motorcycle harness, and it's pretty small stuff. I reckon that is probably 1.2 millimeters, something like that. You know, probably not worth that much copper-wise, but it's still worth something. And I've got this thing working pretty well, I think. That tiny little wire, and using the roller razor in there, works really well. So small it's hard to even strip to get a start on it.